Hi, my name is Daniil Rabizo. I'm a lead UI developer, and tonight I'm going to tell you how you can turn your existing Angular application, and this applies to every front-end framework, into the mobile application, and also connect payment to it and generate revenue with it. But first of all, I wanted to ask our audience, please raise your hand if you think that Angular is good for web, but not really suitable for mobile development. Okay, so actually Angular, spoiler alert, is not the best framework for mobile development. And it lacks native mobile features. There is no cross-platform support for different devices like in Flutter or React Native. And also it's slower in development than React, for example. But what if after years of development of a big and successful project, a client now wants to publish it on the App Store? Because the goal is to cost efficiently create a new revenue source, keep the same features of the app, just publish them to the App Store, and keep existing code unchanged. And last year I had such a successful story of such an application. I can't tell the real numbers, but in just 2 months, November and December, it generated more than 100,000 euro revenue in each month. And I want to explore the key steps involved into developing such an application. I remember the day when my client asked me, can we just take our Angular app and publish it to the App Store? I had so many questions and doubts in my head. How will it look like? If it's even a good idea, how will it feel like? Will users like it? Will it even work? What are the technologies to use? So I responded right away, let's do it, let's start. But then I faced real challenges. That first, we had an existing UI with all the elements, with header, with footer, with content. And some of you may know that there is an Ionic framework, which was specifically created to develop mobile apps with Angular, and it also has its own components. And the question is, how do we integrate these components into existing UI? Because we didn't want to clash two frameworks and make it unmaintainable. Second of all, many of our features relied heavily on the browser API for files downloading, for opening things in new tabs, and none of this exists on the mobile anymore. So how do we also integrate it? And last but not least, the payment guidelines with Apple and Google are very strict because they want to take the commission. Apple takes 30% of commission and you can't avoid it. Because in their rules, it's like it's beyond the law to avoid. You can't redirect somewhere, so it's like illegal.
This happened like 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So this, yeah.
Okay, JetBrains license right there. Yeah, so if you try to, okay, 2 weeks ago, if you try to avoid this, straight to jail, it's not allowed. And the solution to the first two problems was to integrate mobile API with Capacitor library. And Capacitor library is a cross-platform native runtime for web applications. It means that you write the application once in JavaScript and build it automatically for iOS and for Android at once. And this way, there is no need for Ionic components and dependency at all, because Capacitor is simply a wrapper, a web view wrapper inside the native application, which provides you a bridge from your Angular or from your front-end code to the device API. And with this way you can access many features like camera, file system, notifications, geolocation, and many, many more. The next problem we had is that, as I mentioned, we relied on the browser API, and we had two applications in an X monorepo setup, one for web, one for mobile, and around 70 feature libraries. And these feature libraries heavily depended on the browser API. And in applications like this on the market, you would most often see constructs like this. Like if we are in a mobile setup, do one thing. If we are in a web setup, do another thing. And this is what we want to avoid by any cost, because this makes the whole app unreadable and unmaintainable. So for example, we had to open a new tab from some feature, and this is not possible anymore on the mobile because there are no tabs at all. And the solution to this is to abstract this behind an interface and create separate implementations of this interface. So if we want to open a link in a new tab, we need an interface link opener with an open method, and we need two separate implementations of this interface. One is for mobile and another one is for web. The one for web just calls what I previously shown window open, and the one for mobile, it calls the capacitor plugin browser and opens an in-app browser. And the question is, how do we call this interface, call these services correctly? And Angular has one feature which makes, in my opinion, stand out among all other frameworks, is injection token. And you can create an injection token and say, okay, this service is for mobile application and this service is for web application. And in your feature, you should only depend on the abstraction, on this injection token, and you just call the link opener open method, and you don't need any if-else logic for different platforms. So the next problem was enhancing mobile user experience, because if the app if it doesn't look good, it won't pass through the Apple or Google reviews. So the application has to be adapted for the mobile platform, and it has to look and feel good, because once you submit it for review to Apple and Google, the real testers will download the app and test it manually. And if it doesn't work, they will give you feedback probably to fix it, but it won't make right away to the App Store. Next is, in browser, we have these back and forth buttons with which we can navigate through the browser history. And of course, none of this exists on the mobile. There are no such buttons. So you have to implement the gesture support. And this is possible with some JavaScript and Swift code a bit for iOS. And in also to make your mobile application differ from the web application, you can implement push notifications to be able to engage with your users and lead them to purchase or send them relevant content, news, or whatever you prefer. And the question is, I have started creating such an application. How do I deploy it to the App Store and to the Google Play? So you need two developer accounts, one for Apple and one for Google. Of course, it's not free. It costs something, and your application will have to have a bundle ID. This is the unique identifier which stays with the application for its lifetime. You can never change it. The application can have an icon, name, pictures, or description, but the bundle ID always stays the same. And then you have to have an Xcode and Android Studio for deploying it. With it, you can publish your application directly to the Apple Developer Console and Google Play Console. And then the testers will download it, and in my experience, it usually takes 2-3 days on average to review the applications. And what's actually about the in-app payments? Because this was the reason why we even created this application. So for in-app payments, you need a payment provider, because you want to speak to a single API, because the in-app payments on Apple and Google are completely different things and they are implemented differently. And this single API allows you to keep your code simple. Also, this API, this payment provider, will handle purchases, refunds, errors, and any events that happen in this process for you. And you can also have dashboards. Each payment provider has dashboards where you can see the whole information from both stores in one place regarding the revenue, users, how much time it takes one user since he started the application until he made a purchase, and so on. And for this technology stack, for Angular and Capacitor, there are two main providers, RevenueCat and Conversion. RevenueCat is a bit more expensive than Conversion. Actually, both of them are free to a certain degree. But RevenueCat is a bit more expensive, but it provides better documentation and it has bigger clients, so we went with RevenueCat. And after you have chosen the payment provider, you can create your products So the items which you're actually going to sell on your mobile application. And you have to create them separately in the App Store and in the Google Play. Once you define them there, you can import them to the payment provider and define name and description for them. But how do you actually access these products which you're going to sell in code? I'm going to explain you how. So from your front-end application, Angular, for example, you have to call the getProducts method of your payment provider. It's just a simple function which you import in your TypeScript class. Then you get a list of products, and each product has an ID, description, name, whatever, and you can show them in such nice cards with a purchase button. And once the user hits this purchase button, you have to pass the ID of the product to the payment provider by calling its purchase function. And what it does, it opens the native pop-up. For example, when you buy an application on the App Store, you get the pop-up where you can enter your password, Apple ID, or pay with a Face ID. This is just the same. And once this happens, the payment provider will have to call your backend. And on your backend, you need two endpoints for this. One is for saving the payment results, if the payment was successful, if there was an error, a timeout, or whatever, so that next time when user logs into your application, you can know, okay, this user has this product, and we unlock certain features for these users. And the second endpoint is a status endpoint. So while all this purchase process is happening within minutes, for example, your front end has to poll your backend, means call the backend with regular, so that once the purchase is successful, you get the success, and you can show the green notification on the screen, or a red one. Or you can run a timeout, so you need to know if it was successful or not. And up until this point, it still wasn't, so months of work were already invested, and it still wasn't clear if we're going to make through the review. Because we have to pass the Apple review, we have to pass the Google review, and some of the guidelines can be really strict and frustrating. Because, like you mentioned, if you would avoid the payment procedure 2 weeks ago, they would ban your app forever. So it's illegal on the App Store. Or if you will have to provide the link to your website or to your web application to the testers, they will also click it through. And if it's just the same as your mobile app, so your mobile app does not differ from the web app in any way, they will also provide feedback that they don't want anything that's just the same as the web application on the App Store, because it doesn't provide any use to the users. If you, by accident, mention Android on your iOS application, yeah, it can happen, yeah? They will also provide feedback for you to fix. Or if you're submitting an MVP and you have such coming soon placeholders, you will ship the feature soon, so you want to tease it. They also don't want anything of this on the App Store. And if your application is just another calculator, which are already thousands on the App Store, it doesn't provide any additional experience to users, they will also ban it. They don't want it. But we were lucky, we studied the guidelines very carefully, and we were lucky to publish it without any feedback on both stores on the first try. And a year since the application existed, we never got any feedback from Apple or Google.
Do you have any users?
We have more than 200,000 users. And once this all done, you can publish and profit from your application. And now I can answer your questions. By the way, you can scan this QR code. This is a link to my LinkedIn. And you can ask me questions there, or you can subscribe, because I post insights about front-end development regularly there too. The app sells licenses to certain functionality of the app, and the functionality is for crypto traders to generate tax reports. So you buy a license for a year, and you can generate a tax report from profit of your transactions.
And have you ever faced any performance issues, and how do you maybe debug it?
Especially on Android.
Doesn't matter, yeah, but on mobile, yeah.
It's a good question. Actually, all performance issues would be related to the JavaScript code, because you don't have to deal much with what is compiled into Android or iOS. So the only performance is what you write in Angular or Frontend or React or whatever you use. And the tools for that are the same. So Chrome DevTools and so on. Nothing mobile specific there. All the devices you can just exclude them from your. You say that, okay, we allow our app to be used on devices since 2019, for example.
So I had a question about what your decision was to go with Ionic, given sort of how it's kind of older compared to something like Socket Runtime.
Can you repeat the last two words?
So there's another competitor to sorry, can't hear me? Okay. So there's a competitor to Ionic capacitor called Socket Runtime, which is newer and polyfills a lot of the things that you said were challenges, fixes a lot of those issues. I'm just curious if you had seen it before and you made a decision based on something, maybe what you could tell me what that decision might have been.
Yeah, I've never heard about this framework, but we went for capacitor because we can simply reuse our existing designs. It has great support, great community, documentation, and it can do anything we needed, all features we needed.
Does it also, is it also able to target Xbox and PlayStation and other things like that?
I think it's not, but our aim wasn't to target users on Xbox or Microsoft Store, because it would be kind of hard to manage all the transactions and crypto stuff on Xbox.
Hi. So my question is it true that during winter months you can warm up your apartment running Android Studio alone?
It very much depends on the laptop you use.
Okay, thanks.
So for some laptops, yeah, definitely.
So this is a technical question. So this is about generalizing implementation of handling opening links, because you called it provide tokens method.
Yes.
And I'm curious whether this is providing types. So are you getting auto-completion from language server? Because I have seen that the provide tokens is an array of definitions, and I assume that Angular is handling this somehow in runtime. So I would say that you don't get auto-completion, and I think this looks really genius, and this is very smart to handle this like that. Obviously, this is a way to handle multiple platforms. This is basically strategy design pattern applied to in capacitor or any other framework. But my question is, do you rely on type definitions, or did you maybe fall back? This could be globally declared module, which is extending this like it's done in React Router, for example. But was this a problem for you when it comes to types, or did you apply this change just before the deployment to multiple platforms in the code? Okay, I hope you understand my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is decided at runtime which service will be called, and this is very much typed with TypeScript, because injection token is a generic which accepts an interface, and when you inject it then in Angular, you know which type it has and which method it has, so it's completely typed.
Okay, so it works.
It works, yeah.
Any more questions? Lovely.
Hello. Might be a silly question. Why didn't you use progressive web application for your purposes?
Because we had features with camera access. I'm not sure if PWA can do this. It can? Okay, we wanted like a more native experience rather than PWA. Can PWA be published on the App Store?
Android.
Okay, maybe it can be on Google Play, but the goal was to generate revenue and target new users on the App Store platform. That's why we didn't go with PWA.
Right. We have still time for questions if anyone else is keen to. If not, then all right. Get your mic.
To also add offline support to the mobile app, and maybe whether it like also migrated somehow to the web app in a way, or not at all.
We don't have any offline support, but this is of course possible. But this application specifically, if the user loses connection, it shows the screen, please connect with the internet. And as soon as you connect, it continues working.
And thank you so much for sharing loads of useful information to us today. And yep, one more time, applause, please. And thank you so much.
Warsaw.